Hello, my name is Charles Warger. I am the pastor of Kingwood Baptist Church in Kingwood, West Virginia. Now, I'm about to cover Luke 1:18-20. Before that verse, the angel Gabriel comes to Zechariah in the temple and he informs Zechariah that he and Elizabeth, they're going to have a child, John the Baptist, and John is going to be the front runner to Jesus Christ. He's going to prepare the way for Jesus. Now this is how Zechariah responds in Luke chapter 1, verses 18-20. Zechariah asked the angel, "How can this be? I'm an old man, and my wife is well along in the years." The angel answered, "I am Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God, and I have been here to speak to you and to tell you this good news. And now you're going to be silent and not be able to speak until the day this happens, until the day John's born, because you did not believe my words, which will come true at their proper time." Zechariah most likely had prayed many days, and many nights for a child. And now his prayers were finally being answered. And he doubted. He said, "How can this be? I'm an old man and my wife is well advanced in years. Past childbearing years. How can this be?" And as a result of Zechariah questioning God's plan, Gabriel makes Zechariah unable to speak until the child is born. In a way, it's kind of like, "Okay, Zechariah, you just said enough. Now you sit back and watch God work." But I ask you, was it harsh for Gabriel to mute Zechariah for this time period? Other people doubted God, and they weren't dealt with as Zechariah was. Do you think that was a little harsh of a punishment for Zechariah? I think a key thing to remember is that Zechariah had prayed for a child over and over. He had prayed for many years, most likely. Many years he'd prayed. Now, it probably had been years since he'd prayed, since he and Elizabeth were now older, but that still doesn't take away that for many years he'd prayed for a child, and now God sent Gabriel, an angel, to inform Zechariah that his prayer was going to be answered. God was going to give Zechariah what he prayed for. What if we prayed for something specific for years and years and years, and an angel comes that's sent from God to tell us that God is going to answer our prayers? That should be a time of celebration, right? Not a time of questioning whether it's possible, questioning whether God's able to do it. Remember, Zechariah was a priest. He should have known that if God can create the heavens and the earth from nothing, if God can do that, he can surely give John and Elizabeth a son. God had answered Zechariah's prayer, and it seemed for a moment, that Zechariah, because of doubt, he was hesitant to receive the blessing. Compare that with Elizabeth's reaction. Now Luke chapter 1:23-25 tells us Elizabeth's reaction. When his time of service was completed, Zechariah returned home. After this, his wife Elizabeth was pregnant, and for 5 months she remained in seclusion. "The Lord has done this for me," she said, "and these days he's shown his favor and taken away my disgrace among the people." Now, go back to the beginning of this chapter in Luke chapter 5 and 6. Even without a child, Elizabeth was an upright person, blameless in the sight of God. Even though she didn't have a child, she obeyed God and she was faithful. We know that from the opening verses in Luke chapter 1. But once Elizabeth Elizabeth finds out that she's pregnant, once she finds out this good news, she is so grateful to God, and she praises God. She gives thanksgiving to God. She doesn't question, like Zechariah, whether God can or can't do it. She praises God because she knows that God is at work. Now, one can argue that Elizabeth had the advantage of hindsight that Zechariah did not have, because the verse tells us that Elizabeth was praising God when she was pregnant, and Zechariah was told the news that Elizabeth would become pregnant before she was pregnant. So Elizabeth did have a hindsight in the verses that John didn't have, so we can keep that in mind. But I have 2 points. First, even though Elizabeth was pregnant, even though she might have had the hindsight that she was pregnant, so many things still could have gone wrong in that pregnancy. So many things in that day did go wrong when younger people had babies. So someone well past the childbearing years, so many things could have gone wrong. However, Elizabeth wasn't worried about that. She was so grateful to God. And she knew everything would work out because she knew it was God that was at work. She was so grateful to God. And she expressed that gratitude. Second, even though Elizabeth may have had the advantage of being pregnant, and Zechariah heard the news before Elizabeth was pregnant, I still think God expected more from Zechariah. I think God expected him to react more like Elizabeth reacted. He wanted Zechariah to trust God, to understand that God is faithful when he makes promises. And I believe God wanted Zechariah to express gratitude and trust, not doubt. I mean, an angel of the Lord came to Zechariah and told him that something was going to happen, and he doubted it. Zechariah was a respected religious leader, and he was an upright man. Under those circumstances, I believe that God expected Zechariah to react to his prayers being answered with a lot more thankfulness than he showed at the time period. Now, in conclusion, let me say this. For many, many years, Zechariah and Elizabeth, they prayed for a child. Yet, as the years passed, that hope became dimmer and dimmer. Their dream became unlikely. As the years passed, it became more and more unlikely. And their hearts were breaking. Then, when they were both well advanced in years, think about this, when they were both well advanced in years, God sent Gabriel to inform Zechariah that they weren't just going to have a son, but they were going to have a son who would be spiritually and historically significant. He would play a spiritual and historical pivotal role. I mean, just think about it. John the Baptist lived 2,000 years ago. And 2,000 years later, in today's world, he's still well known. He's still well respected. Think about that. I mean, yes, Zechariah and Elizabeth, they sure had to wait. They waited a long time. But their prayers were answered. Their prayers were answered in a big way. I mean, big time. They gave birth to John the Baptist. Think about how much honor that would have. Think about how much of a joy giving birth to John the Baptist. What a reward. Friends, this passage of Scripture, it reminds me that we should never lose hope. We should never lose hope. Now let's be real. Sometimes in this life, we have to climb treacherous, icy mountains, until we reach valleys and grass where we can pleasantly stroll with the sun shining on our face. Sometimes to get to that point, we have to climb those treacherous, icy mountains. Whatever you're going through, hang in there and never lose hope. We serve an awesome God. Thank you.